Good evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the June 13th.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll start that over then. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you and call to order the June 13th Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. As we take the actions tonight, the actions we're about to take tonight, I'd like to remind us of our guiding principles that are we raising the bar? Are we honoring the past but not living in the past? Are we building connections with outside partners? And is the decision-making process positively impacting diversity, equity, and inclusion? Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. We have a published agenda, and I know it's quite large, but are there any additions or subtractions proposed to this evening's agenda? Not? Is Councilmember Clausen?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, and I heard a second by Councilmember Terneri to approve the agenda as published. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been set for this evening. We are to our first citizen comment period, and that is for anything that is on this evening's agenda, and there's quite a few things. So if you wish to be recognized, just step to the microphone, identify yourself for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the City Council.
That up for you really
Just
quick.
let me know when you're set there. Thank you. That's it. Good evening. My name is Jeff Daly. I'm a citizen of Port Orchard. I realize that you have no choice but to support our fire department, but I'd like to make some comments here. This is a comparison of the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue and the Seattle Fire Department. You're wondering why residential or out in the country versus density, and the answer is because that's the only one I could find where the numbers come out according to favor for the fire department. SKFR has approximately 145 people. Seattle has about 1,086. Second line has our populations as on the internet, so about 10 to 1. If you look at the National Fire Protection Association 1710, which is the standard for organization deployment, you'll see that their manning is allowed about 1.68. It ranges between 1.53 and another. 1.68 per 1,000 people. If you apply the numbers there that you see, Seattle Metro is allowed 1,197 people. They have 1086. We're allowed 84. We have approximately 145. That's kind of a problem for me. Areas are about the same. If you look at the number of stations we have versus theirs, you'll see we have 11, they have 33. And stations per population, they have 21,806 is what they serve, and we serve about 6,700 with our stations. So kind of a comparison between the two. Next slide, please. Okay, so response times is also in there. 4 minutes is desired for a structural fire. They use about 30 to 35 miles an hour. At that rate, we need one station every 4 miles. It confirms that the issue is really not the response time. The issue is when it's called in. So if your house has been burning for 15 minutes, a 4-minute response time is going to be a little late, and that comes from the NFPA 1710. For EMS, about brain damage occurs in about 4 minutes. If you sever an artery or severe damage, you're going to bleed out in about 3 to 6, depending on how bad it is. And for my house, since I'm home during the day alone, closest fire station to my house is 10 minutes, so it's not going to matter in anything. So I'll have more comments later, but I wanted to use this as background information. And I will make comments at the end regarding the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue Levy, but I wanted to give some information. I would have used the,
Sorry, the 3 minutes is up,
Great.
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening in our first citizen comment period? And anyone online, you could use the raise your hand feature and the clerk will bring you into the meeting.
We do have one person, Mr. Dave Kimball, so I will allow him to speak. Just give me 1 moment.
You take the slides down, Janine.
Okay, Mr. Kimball, you should be good to go.
Thank you. Hello there, City Council. Nice to see you tonight. I haven't ever actually attended any of your meetings. I sure like the way you've got this feature with just letting people raise their hand and speak. I wish some of the other agencies would do that. I looked at Mr. Daly's numbers a few days ago, and I came to the same conclusion that although we need a healthy fire department, when you look at the numbers at a large metro city like Seattle, and you see the number of fire stations they have compared to the number of citizens that they serve, there's something very lopsided about what our fire district is planning to do with opening 5 more, 6 more stations. And the number is it's lopsided as far as need. I don't believe all the hype that we're going to be neck deep in people here pretty quick. And I also noticed, having come from other agencies and working for federal government, that there's an awful lot of, I don't want to sound inappropriate, a lot of chiefs compared to the number of Indians they're supervising. I think this is more of a money management, funding management issue, not so much they can't live off the taxes they're already collecting for property. But all these levies and any bonds, it's just like the school districts. You need to live within your means. And there's a real problem when you spend $2.2 million on 6 properties. You use the cash and say, I'm saving you money on a bond or a levy. And now we have to build all these buildings and hire all these people to fill these buildings, all the property we bought because it was such a good deal. It reminds me of how all the 9th graders at Marcus Whitman got moved up to the high school to overcrowd the high school to justify building a second high school. So, but thank you for your service, SKFR, and I am part of the committee that's opposing your levy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council this evening? Any item on the agenda? We have a second citizen comment period at the end of the meeting for any item.
No one else has raised their hands at this moment.
Okay, so I will close the first citizen comment period. We're to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Councilmember Trenary?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Trenary, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli to approve the consent agenda for this evening. And so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has been approved. We have 3 presentations this evening. The first is which is the Citizens Award by Chief Brown. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I have a very distinct honor today of presenting a community member with a Chief's Award. So as we've discussed in this chamber and throughout the last year, we had a significant issue with the derelict boats out on Sinclair Inlet. And Mr. Colin Stewart, whom I asked to come up and join me here, initially sent me some excellent renderings of the problem. And instead of just expressing, hey, this is a problem, I want you to fix it, he partnered with Sergeant Trey Holden, who heads our Marine Patrol Unit. And instead of just complaining, he chose to be part of the solution. And so that's why we're going to thank him tonight. So I have something to read and then present him with our award. So the Port Orchard Police Department believes in the recognition of community members who, through their actions, directly benefit the quality of life and public safety in our community. In keeping with our mission and vision, the City of Port Orchard and the Port Orchard Police Department recognize Mr. Colin Stewart for his outstanding efforts in 2022. Vessels moored on the seafloor of Washington State are either on private property or land managed by the Department of Natural Resources. Portions of Sinclair Inlet are part of the City of Port Orchard, and over several years, derelict vessels accumulated until about 35 were moored in the area. These vessels pose an array of problems. Without anchor lights and hours of darkness, they are navigational hazards, and when they break free in high winds, they pose a danger to state ferries, homes, marinas, and create national security concerns for the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. Vessels may also capsize, sink, and become beached. Hazardous chemicals are then introduced into the ecosystem and become a safety hazard for all life in the area. Mr. Stewart reached out with his shared frustrations, and instead of demanding change, he chose to partner and act. Mr. Stewart agreed to take daily time-stamped photos of the vessels from his home, ensuring our agency had the digital evidence required to prove the vessels were in violation of maritime laws. Without this daily documentation, it is highly unlikely the program would have been successful in demonstrating the full scope of the problem. With his assistance, the Port Orchard Police Department seized 4 vessels and removed 2 others that had become beached. The remaining derelicts were claimed by owners and removed from Sinclair Inlet. So the police chief's citation is awarded to those citizens who contribute significantly to providing safety in the community. The successful removal of derelict vessels from Sinclair Inlet is a direct result of Mr. Stewart's diligence and sense of duty to provide for safety to our community. Therefore, the actions of Mr. Stewart qualify him for the police chief's commendation and bestow upon him the appreciation of this city and this department. And so this is a chief's coin. So for those of you that have been military service, you understand the exchanging of coins. These coins are only given when they're earned. I do not trade these for other things. So this is from me, so thank you. I appreciate it. And then this is from our department and the city for you. And like I said, 10 minutes and an interpretive dance. And to finalize, and again, Sergeant Trey Holden did a great job of putting this together. We did, the program was funded by DNR, and it was $100,000 to remove and destroy all of those boats. But when we look out the windows right now, you can see that we have a much cleaner inlet, and it is directly due to you. So thank you. Thank you again. Yeah. We'll go from shot me too? Absolutely. Take a picture with your
Congratulations. Thank you, Chief.
Colin.
All right. Our next presentation, I'm very excited about. For more than a couple of years, we have been working towards a master plan project in our downtown. We earned the support of the Public Facilities District for our new community center, the site that which will be sited at Kitsap Bank's current corporate headquarters. And the bank has been working in earnest to design and build their new corporate headquarters on our waterfront next door to our community center. So this evening, Kitsap Bank and their representatives are here to unveil the renderings of their new building. And later this evening, it is proposed that we'll hold a public hearing and that you'll vote on a development agreement that'll allow this project to move forward. So I see Jeff Foster from GGLO in the audience. I think he's going to lead us in a presentation here. And I see representatives from the bank, and Steve Politakis, the bank's president. Thank you, Steve, for being here. And Larry Garon, who heads up development for the bank. So thank you for being here tonight. So take it away, Jeff.
Thanks, Rob. Also here tonight is my colleague Mitch Potachik, who's our project manager and another architect on the project. Thanks for your time. As Rob said, we're going to share a little bit about the progress of the design of the project, and I'm here to tell you I'll be mercifully brief. There are only 7 slides. So if you were thinking the architect was going to put you all to sleep, not tonight. Quick reminder, this is where we were with the master plan for downtown over a year ago, with the community center in blue on the left and the bank's location in purple on the right. The other facilities which would come along in the future at some time by private development are also shown on there. The site plan, when we developed this, was very preliminary, and since that time, next slide please, We've zeroed in on a more exact site plan. This is the ground floor of the bank, shown with some preliminary landscape design of what would be in the Bay Street improvements, which I know the city is working towards, Orchard Plaza to the west, and improvements on Frederick Street to the east. Off the slide is the pump station, which I know is the construction of which is imminent. We're very excited that you all are going to be moving forward, hopefully, with the plaza design, and I think you'll be talking about that later tonight. But really, the focus tonight is on the development agreement. So quickly, you can see where the lobby and the bank areas are, a small amount of visitor parking, and I'm not going to get into the functional parts of the inside of the building. Next slide, please. This is a view from the southwest corner looking towards the building entry off of Bay Street. This reflects the future condition of Bay Street when everything is essentially at the same grade once it's elevated, showing the portico that continues along the entire east elevation of the building, connecting it to the plaza. And then we have one more view. Next slide. This is from the east side of the building, from Bay Street, looking at the corner of the building. There's a series of windows and panels on the Bay Street side. The building is a little more closed on the Bay Street side. And the stair tower to the right is required for egress. We have to have one on that side of the building. If you can go to the next slide. And this is the final slide. This is the view at this time, and we're still at a late schematic, early design development stage of the project. But you can see that it's much more glassy and taking advantage of the opportunity for views to the north, across the water to the shipyard, and the mountains in the distance. It is a mass timber building, meaning it's built out of cross-laminated timber, which is great for carbon sequestration. It also has an inherent natural beauty inside the building, and then we're trying to continue that design theme on the outside of the building with lots of wood and obviously lots of glass for the views. We don't plan to paint the ground white in the foreground. That's immediately off our site, and we're excited to see what the city and its team is coming up with for the waterfront improvements and for the Orchard Plaza improvements. So I promise to be brief, and I think that may be the briefest design presentation I've made in 37 years.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. And council members, I know it was tough for you to see that from across the room, but I'll have Nick actually email that. He already did. Wonderful. So it should be in your email box so you can look at those slides a little closer and see the detail a little bit better, because we're at a bit of a disadvantage across the room. But thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Questions for Jeff?
Very excited about this project moving forward, and it's great to see the designs in color. And I mean, it's going to be a real addition to the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I would add the excitement, but I also liked and appreciate the wood elements to it. I think it's going to blend well with the community center, as we've talked about it. I think they're going to just really complement that into town. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? No? All right. We'll move on to our third presentation. We've got Chief Fawcett from South Kitsap Fire and Rescue here. So Chief, take it away.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
make a comment first?
Yes.
And nothing to Chief Fawcett to stop him, but I just wanted to flag for council and staff members present that we have RCW 4250 to 180 pertaining to the use of public facilities to lobby for a ballot proposition, lobby for or against. It's the same rule we've talked about in the sense of elected officials using these facilities, or folks running for office using facilities to advocate on behalf of a proposition. And the public commenters that spoke earlier triggered this for me. I think those public commenters made statements of fact or their perceived facts as opposed to advocating one way or the other for a particular ballot proposition. The key difference is to say vote no, vote yes, if you're merely stating information as opposed to making that sort of affirmative statement. So I want to flag this for all of us as we continue through this election season, and know that I will interrupt public commenters to the extent that those violations occur. And I thought this was a good time, since I understand that Chief Fawcett is here to speak to the facts underlying the current levy. So thanks so much.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. I got a little nervous, Mayor, when you introduced Jeff Foster. I think you said Foster. I thought I was getting ready to introduce the architectural work. So Jeff Fawcett is doing the fire department. Jeff Foster can do the architect. So, okay, no, we're good. All right, with that being said, thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Potatsu and Port Orchard residents for allowing me to speak on behalf of South Kitsap Fire and Rescue. Everybody knows me. I can be long-winded, so I've chose to write my comments down to keep this within my 10 minutes so that we don't have a long night here tonight. We appreciate the work that we have done together to make Port Orchard a safe and vibrant community. We should all love and see our community growing in many ways very rapidly. The growth is amazing, and it creates so many opportunities for all of us. It also creates challenges. As a leader in our community, I'm embraced the opportunities I see, and I view challenges as positive light. Our community has seen many positive opportunities with growth that are visible to all of us. Your work that we just saw to cast the vision of what Port Orchard could look like in the future is important. The revitalization downtown is a great example. The future Civic Center is much needed addition to our growing city and our surrounding areas. Your efforts to create your efforts to create opportunities for a community to come together by encouraging new businesses, promoting public gatherings and public spaces, and providing fun places to bring your families that we needed for a long time. I'm sure that the work you do brings challenges to growth, and we all want to keep up the hard work for our community. Thank you for what you're doing. As your fire chief, I want to share with you some challenges and opportunities that South Kitsap Fire and Rescue is facing. Just like the city of Port Orchard, we are seeing increased growth in the work that we do for our South Kitsap community. This work is based on the projections we've seen from Kitsap County, and the city will continue to increase as our population increases. New businesses will come to our community, and visitors will make this a destination city. The mission of our fire department is to provide fire and EMS services to our entire community, a community that covers 117 square miles and nearly 80,000 residents. South Kitsap Fire and Rescue is not just the city of Port Orchard's fire department. We're the fire district. We are a fire district. Our borders are from the water along Beach Drive out to Manchester, along Southworth Drive to Banner Road to Pierce County line all the way out to Mason County, including Highway 3 and Old Belfair Highway, up to the city of Bremerton, back around the water on Bay Street to Beach Drive. And we also cover the unincorporated pieces of Bremerton, Rocky Point, and the southern portion of Navy Yard City. That's your fire district. We do have 6 fire stations that are staffed 24 hours a day, and another 5 that are staffed by our volunteers within the fire department. We have 93 firefighters on staff, and every firefighter in South Kitsap must be either an EMT or a paramedic. Simply put, we have 72 firefighter EMTs and 21 firefighter paramedics. Now, our community may not understand that the firefighters who are on the fire engines are also, and can be, and most time will be, on an ambulance as well. Our agency provides all fire suppression services, EMS services, ambulance transport, hazardous materials, special operation responses, and we're proud to do it. In addition to these duties, we're actively rebuilding our community outreach program after the pandemic shut it down, and I'm proud of the work our members of our fire districts do in our community. In 2013, Council, our call volume was 8,200 plus calls. And in 2022, just last year, we responded to 12,708 times, and that's a 55% increase over a 10-year period. And since 2013, our staffing has been 19 firefighters, 24 hours a day. And this simply is not enough. Your firefighters are responding to 35 calls per day or 1.5 calls per hour over that 117 square miles. And as you can imagine, having the same number of people responding to calls as we did in 2013 causes us challenges. Unfortunately, the most visible challenge that we see is a slower response time to our community. In fact, data is showing that our average response times now have increased 1 minute and 21 seconds since 2013, and we have to address this. How can we address this? First, I think it's important our community understands how SKFR is funded. I think we've been confused. We have three main sources of funding: a fire levy, an EMS levy, and I'll label the rest other income. For the sake of time, I won't go into detail, but I encourage anybody here tonight or listening to come visit me, and I'll get a whiteboard, a couple cups of coffee, and I think we can solve how we're funded in detail. But simply, the other income includes ambulance transport fees, contracts, and sometimes grants, and that's about 15% of our budget. The third leg of our revenue is the EMS levy, and that accounts for about 25% of our revenue. The EMS levy must be spent on EMS operations, and it can't be spent in fire per RCWs, and you would see that within our budget every year. The EMS levy has a maximum cap of 50 cents per $1,000 assessed valuation on tax property in the fire district. It's a temporary levy, and it has to be renewed every 6 years. It was just renewed in 2021. The third and the most prominent leg of the fire department is the fire levy, and that's 60% of our overall budget. It's used for daily operations in the fire district. The fire levy supports our support staff, training division, human resources, finance team, fleet services, facility services, IT, and our suppression personnel. It also funds small capital projects in our world, such as ambulances, fire engines, HVAC units, and all those things that we need to keep the fire district running. It funds repairs and maintenance of tools, equipment, vehicles, fuel, powers. And the fire levy was last restored in 2017. And I believe it's important for our community to understand that the fire district does not receive any revenue from the state of Washington, county, or local jurisdictions. We don't receive sales tax of any sort, and we are fully funded from the three areas I just explained. In the last 3 years as a fire chief, I've led our organizations through the pandemic, high number of retirees, shoring up and increasing our recruiting processes, and have worked to prepare our fire district for the future. The reality is that we are simply behind where we should be for a fire agency of our size. If there was time, I could show you comparables around the Puget Sound that are serving communities our size with the same assessed valuation, where they have nearly 1.5 times the number of firefighters that we do here in South Kitsap. We do a lot more with a lot less. Since 2021, I've made it my priority and our agency's priority to increase the staffing levels for our community to keep up with growth. Just as important as our community safety is the safety of our employees. National standards for fire departments are to have 3 firefighters on every fire engine, and in fact, the standard calls for 4 firefighters for every fire engine. Our neighbors in Gig Harbor, Bremerton, and others are actively working to increase staffing levels for their community and firefighter safety. It's critical that South Kitsap not only places 2 additional units in service 24 hours a day, but our fire engines have a minimum of 3 personnel on them, and this will take time, and this will be a commitment. The commitment will need to come from the fire district, and you have that. If the funding is available for us, we will deliver, just as we have done in the past with public funds that we have been entrusted with. Earlier, I stated that our fire levy accounts for 60% of our budget. This August, Proposition 1 will be on our ballots during the primary election. That proposition is asking voters in South Kitsap to consider restoring our fire levy back to $1.50 and adding additional funds to our budget. With the new revenue, the district will be able to hire 21 additional firefighters over the next 6 years, and we will do it much faster if we can. Those 21 firefighters will help us achieve a minimum daily staffing of 27 firefighters on duty. Add those 2 additional units, including restaffing the Station 10 out on Banner Road, and increase the number of firefighters on our fire engines to 3. It will also continue to support the operations of the district by keeping the lights on, paying for supplies, new equipment, and apparatus. Many in our community understand how the fire district is funded, and we're thankful for that. We need to revisit our levies every 6 years and share the need for the growth. This is the way our state works, and as a fire chief, these are the rules that I have to live by. I'm thankful for our community who understands what it takes to provide fire and EMS services. If anyone on the council or in our community would like to learn more about Proposition 1, feel free to visit our website at skfr.org or always contact me. I'll take the time to visit with anybody and answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions for you, Chief? Councilmember Rosa Pippi has got a question for you, sir.
So, two questions, Chief.
Yes, sir.
One is, what percent of your budget is for personnel? I think you mentioned that.
Yep, it runs, it depends on the year, but it runs between 82 and 86%.
Okay. And the second question was, this levy there's no building in this levy.
That's correct. That's
okay.
correct. That's a misconception. We had ran a bound in 2020. We have purchased properties. Right. The plan is for 3 stations, but levies are for people, bonds are for buildings.
This is operations.
This is operations for people.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you coming this evening.
Thank you.
All right, we are to item 6 on our agenda, which is a public hearing, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Kitsap Bank for a new headquarters building in downtown Port Orchard. Mr. Bond, this is you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of council. The city has negotiated a development agreement with Kitsap Bank for a new Kitsap Bank corporate headquarters building to be located at 625 Bay Street. This project is part of a 4-year planning process to redevelop the west end of downtown Port Orchard that has been coordinated with the adjacent Community Event Center, Marina Sewer Lift Station, and the Bay Street reconstruction projects. The project is identified in the Port Orchard Downtown Subarea Plan and Planned Action Environmental Impact Statement. The proposed building would contain approximately 43,000 square feet and be 3 stories in height. It is anticipated that the project will add 50 new jobs in downtown Port Orchard, in addition to the existing jobs in the current Kitsap Bank building. The proposed agreement covers a variety of development requirements summarized as follows. Public frontage improvements along Bay Street and Frederick Street, including a fee in lieu of construction of improvements along Frederick Street, providing impact fee credits for previous uses of the site and for buildings to be demolished, providing water capital facility charge credits based on previous uses of the site and buildings to be demolished, providing for sewer general facility fee credits for previous uses of the building, of the site and the buildings to be demolished, providing for an existing off-site parking lot to serve the project, providing flexibility from the city design standards and resulting in superior design outcomes, granting concurrency approval for water, sewer, and transportation, providing cooperation to allow the location of the bank's proposed generator on public property, and recognizing the economic benefits of the project on the city. Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 20.26 outlines the process for development agreement approval. In this case, the application for the development agreement was filed by Kitsap Bank on May 18th, 2023. The city determined the application to be complete on May 19th, 2023. I, as the SEPA responsible official for the city, determined that SEPA review is not required for the project because the project is part of a planned action and was reviewed under an environmental impact statement issued on April 26, 2021. The city provided notice of application and advertised a public hearing consistent with the requirements of the municipal code. The city DCD has received 2 comments in response to the notice of public hearing, which are attached in your packet. The staff recommendation is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed ordinance approving a development agreement, and hopefully later tonight to vote to approve that development agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. So at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing related to the development agreement with Kitsap Bank for a new headquarters building in downtown Port Orchard. Is there anyone that wishes to testify on this matter related to the development agreement between the city and Kitsap Bank? And anyone online can use the raise your hand feature and be brought into the meeting.
All right, we have, it looks like 3 people and 1 staff member, and no one has raised their hands yet.
Okay. One last call. Anyone in the audience or online wish to testify in this public hearing for the development agreement between Kitsap Bank and the city of Port Orchard? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. It's one of the few times I get to use this gavel. I like it. All right, we're to our business items. The first of which is item A, adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Kitsap Bank for a development agreement with Kitsap Bank for a development agreement. It's kind of redundant there, isn't it? Mr. Bond?
All right, I'm not going to read the same staff report again, but having received no testimony this evening, there were 2 comments in the packet. The staff recommendation is to approve an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Kitsap Bank as presented.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with Kitsap Bank as presented.
Second.
It's quick. All right. Councilmember Clausen gave us a motion. Councilmember Lucarelli gave us a second. Any discussion or comments? Councilmember Rose Pepe, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know where to start because it's such a great moving forward with this project. It's like it can't come soon enough. I mean, we saw design work tonight. You know, we have an overall master plan, and I commend the mayor and staff for getting this moving forward. So much appreciated, and I'm definitely going to vote yes on this.
Councilmember Clausen.
Yeah, and likewise, I agree with you, Jay, and I would also acknowledge the fact that, you know, for many, many, many years, we have been doing things or trying to do things to start the revitalization of downtown. And I think between the community center and this project, I think we're starting to see that transition, and that in itself is exciting. And I would also want to compliment Kitsap Bank for investing in our community with this project. And, you know, it's going to, as the staff report indicated, it's going to bring more jobs to our community. But I think it's just going to start, it's kind of the catalyst to start this whole redevelopment effort that we've all been desiring for many, many years in our downtown. So thank you to both Kitsap Bank and Mayor and the staff. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I also want to commend you for a great job done. I have to admit that I was a bit nervous about the building. I think you did a beautiful job with the warm wood and the glass to keep the character of the community in a more natural form, and I think it's going to be a beautiful complement to the community center, a lovely addition to our town. So really appreciate all the effort that went into it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Others? Councilmember Trenary.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, very happy to see this project moving forward. Thank you to everybody involved.
All right, this is an exciting moment. I can't say enough about it, but it's just one step. We've got so much more to do. You know, we're out to bid right now on the Marina Pump Station. Within the next 30 to 45 days, we should be awarding that project, and we'll see the first actual construction down there, because we have to have the infrastructure to support, you know, all of these buildings that we're proposing. And then, you know, hopefully the bank's right on the heels of that project, and our community center right after that. So it's exciting times for our community, and I couldn't be happier. With that, you'll be voting on a development agreement between the City of Port Orchard and Kitsap Bank for their new corporate headquarters. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? This passes unanimously. Congratulations. We'll move on to item B now. Adoption of a resolution accepting the Housing Action Plan. Mr. Bond, this is you again.
Yes, thank you. Over the past year, the city has worked with the Planning Commission, stakeholders, and the public to prepare a housing action plan. The Housing Action Plan aims to identify strategies, actions, and policy tools to create enough housing options to meet community needs. The Housing Action Plan is a policy document with a set of steps for the city to support and encourage new housing production that meets local housing needs for residents of all income levels. The Housing Action Plan uses an equity lens to develop clear, actionable strategies to meet current and future housing needs. Port Orchard received a grant from the Washington State Department of Commerce to develop this Housing Action Plan and to address housing needs. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the proposed Housing Action Plan last Tuesday, May 2nd, and continued the hearing, a month ago, and continued the hearing to last Tuesday, June 6th, to allow city staff and consultants time to make suggested revisions to the plan and to ensure that the public had an opportunity to review and provide comments on these revisions. The City Council also weighed in on the Housing Action Plan through the Land Use Committee and during a full City Council discussion of the draft Housing Action Plan at the May 16, 2023 work study meeting. The City carefully considered the public comments received, as well as input from the Planning Commission and the City Council, and on May 24th released a revised draft of the Housing Action Plan. Since the publication of this revised draft, the City has received one additional public comment in support of the proposed Housing Action Plan. The Planning Commission did not receive further testimony on the Housing Action Plan during their reopened public hearing on June 6th, and after closing the hearing, they voted with unanimous consent to recommend that the City Council adopt or accept the Housing Action Plan as written. The staff recommendation is to approve to accept the housing action plan as presented. And if the city council wishes, I can walk you through the red line changes that were made in your draft version. Is that something that you'd like me to do? All right. There were two versions of the housing action plan in your packet. There is the first copy, which is clean, and a second copy, which was redlined. And in your packet, at least the online version, it began on about page 396, I believe. And on page 398 of your packet, which is labeled as page 4 of the housing action plan, the first change we wanted to make in the introduction to the document was to recognize all the efforts that the city has made to address middle and affordable housing over the past 5 years. I think the city has been pretty proactive on this, and as a result, our housing action plan recommendations are far less drastic than compared to what you see in some other cities. So we wanted to provide just some recognition that we have actually done a lot on this already. On page 5 of the housing action plan, that's 399 in your packet, we made homelessness strategies a high priority rather than a medium priority. On page 6 of the housing action plan, we made 3 changes. We wanted to strongly emphasize that the plan was for all of the city, not just for the areas east of Highway 16. We added references to additional data that's available in Appendix B that we always intended to have Appendix B, it just wasn't referred to in the document. And then finally, we clarified the difference between planning targets and the growth that is described as being in the permitting pipeline. It wasn't totally clear whether those were combined numbers or individual numbers. On page 8, we added some captions related to the graphics in the plan. On page 9, we provided additional information to highlight the high number of single-parent households in Port Orchard. I think there was a lot of talk about disadvantaged groups, and we really wanted to highlight that there are also a high number of single-parent households that also have a high need for affordable housing. On page 10, we again added some additional captions for some figures. And we also highlighted that our current growth rate is higher than our housing target, and so we are actually growing faster than we're even supposed to be at this point. And that, again, kind of goes to recognize what we're already doing. On page 12, we added a new section about geographic equity, and again, that's kind of this east versus west Port Orchard issue, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear that all of these policies apply to all areas of the city. On page 13, we modified the introduction to the racially disparate impact section. I think that a lot of people were concerned with the verbiage that was used in the original draft, and we wanted to more generally describe what this term means, and I believe the Planning Commission was satisfied with those changes. Page 14, we added a second table. We basically repeated the table once with percentages and then once with numeric values, so that you actually knew that just because 12% of one particular group struggles to afford housing, it's actually only 6 people, and I think that provides helpful context, and those weren't specific numbers, just for instance. On page 15, we added some context. One of the things we found as we dug into census tract data is that there's actually much more diversity in the older parts of Port Orchard compared to the parts that were annexed over the last 15 years. And so we wanted to point out that the city's policies haven't driven this so much as we have annexed this pattern of development. On page 16, we added a totally new section about the city's military population, and one thing that was pointed out in our process was that many people who are in the armed forces receive housing stipends, and that is not captured in their income data. And so if we're showing a lot of people with low incomes, they may not actually have challenges finding housing because they do receive a sizable stipend to help pay for housing. On page 18, we added a discussion about the McCormick side of town, including some opportunities for increasing density and making sure that middle housing is provided on the west side of the city as well as on the east side of the city. We corrected just a square footage number related to tiny houses. On page 35, we updated the significant tree section to highlight that relaxing significant tree standards comes at an environmental cost, and you're really weighing housing affordability against the environmental benefits of trees. And previously it had been kind of a one-sided discussion that says this is a barrier to housing rather than this is a trade-off that the council has to consider. On page 48, we made a minor change to a proposed job description for a housing coordinator. On page 54, we added some detail about park-oriented development near McCormick Woods and specifically McCormick Village Park, because we do have the middle housing development with McCormick Village being constructed now, and there may be some other opportunities to get other housing types in that area. And then finally, page 59, we added a section about McCormick East, which is near the fire station on Glenwood Road. There's that big logged area that's in the city but is unentitled, and so we identified that as an opportunity for some additional middle housing types along with commercial development as a future master plan area. So those are the changes we made in response to your feedback, and hopefully we are able to finalize this report tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Chang.
I move to approve a resolution accepting the Housing Action Plan dated May 24th, 2023 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Chang, a second by Councilmember Cacciardi. Any comments or questions for Mr. Bond? Go ahead, Councilmember Rosepepe.
Just like to say thanks, Nick, to you and your team for getting this done and getting the updates, listening to our comments from the work study and in general, because I think some of them are significant and reflect accurately what's going on in Port Orchard. Also, I think it helped us, at least me, realize that this is not something, it's an action plan, a roadmap, and not something that has to be implemented immediately or in the future. So from a planning perspective, I think it's a good document. So thank you.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I was actually going to vote no on this housing plan. I did not like the process. I felt that the product that was turned into the Planning Commission was not done as well as it should have been. I understand that it was a grant that was being used. And when we first looked at it, I felt real uncomfortable. But you have addressed many of the issues that I had with it in saying that these are guidelines and not a mandate. Thank you for listening. I want to thank the Planning Commission for all the hard work they put into it. I really think they, and so I will be actually voting yes on this now. Change my mind. Thank you.
Other comments? Councilmember Trenary.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Nick and the team and the Planning Commission for going over those concerns we all had and bringing those current. It looks very good to me, much better than the original draft. And so I plan to vote yes on this tonight as well.
Yeah, and Nick, I also would like to thank you and your staff, the Planning Commission. Numerous hours went into this body of work, and I know it was a heavy lift. So greatly appreciate the efforts and listening to the council and their concerns so that we could get something we were comfortable with. So with that, no further questions. You'll be voting on adopting a resolution accepting a housing action plan for the city. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. We're to item C, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Lincoln Construction, Inc. for the City Hall renovation project. Mr. Lang, this is you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The Port Orchard City Hall facility was constructed in 1999. Through the years, weather, normal wear and tear, and increased staffing have triggered a need to update and renovate the building. In 2020, following a competitively bid selection process, a consultant was hired to determine the current and future needs of the building and to prepare a design for the needed building renovations. The result of the consultant's work determined the need and proposed scope of the City Hall renovations project. By this resolution, the City Council would authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Lincoln Construction, Inc. for the City Hall renovations project. The next paragraph there summarizes the formal procurement procedures that Public Works followed. Lincoln Construction, Inc. was the only bidder of the solicitation and included a base bid amount and also 4 alternates. The total with those alternates without tax is $8,245,941. City Council has the discretion to select from the proposed alternates in addition to the base bid amount. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Lincoln Construction, Inc. for the City Hall renovations project for the base bid amount and all four bid alternates for a total cost of $9,012,913.51, applicable tax included.
Councilmember Cacciardi.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract in the form that is acceptable to the city attorney with Lincoln Construction, Inc. for the City Hall renovations project for the base bid amount and the following alternates, 1, 2, 3, and 4, for a total cost of $9,012,913.51, applicable tax included.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Cacciardi and a second by Councilmember Clausen. So we've got a beautiful new corporate headquarters and community center being built across the street. City Hall's 22 years old now, and our roof's leaking, our windows are leaking, the siding's failing, and we need to address those things. So unfortunately, it was $6 million to build this building 22 years ago, and roof, windows, and siding are on a 6-story building are, nearly $9 million. But we're also going to update the heating system. The building hasn't had new carpet or been painted on the interior in 22 years. It's actually in pretty good shape, considering its age. We're going to address the heating system in the building that doesn't work very well in the wintertime, and a solar array over the canopy over the police department parking lot that will generate 70% of our peak electricity. So on a typical day, we'll be generating all of our own electricity to heat and light this building. So that's pretty exciting. The build alternates, we're going to do small remodels here and there within the building. The police department is growing, their staff is growing in number, and we need to make some modifications down there. The court and the finance front counters, 22 years ago, we weren't as concerned about the American Disabilities Act and having counters that allow us to serve people with disabilities. So we're going to make some modifications there, and then just carpet and paint as we discussed. So it's a much needed refresh. So our beautiful City Hall continues to look beautiful in downtown Port Orchard. So, Councilmember Clausen.
And along those same lines, I think it's important to note to the community that our plan was that our finance director will be coming back with a bond issue. Essentially, we're going to remortgage the building. Similarly, the mortgage has been paid off for a while. We're going to have to reinvest in our building, so we're taking out a home loan to fix this up, and I think it's a wise investment. You mentioned 22 years, and it's like, has it been that long? But when you look at some of the things that you had mentioned, you can start seeing that, it's been 22 years and not much has been invested in those 22 years. So,
it's good points. And next week's Finance Committee, you guys will be talking about that borrowing resolution, and we'll be bringing some budget amendments at the end of the month that'll authorize the funds for this. And then we, as we'll discuss next week, we can cash flow this till just about the end of the year. So the borrowing is going to happen sometime this winter. We'll be bringing that back to you, to the council. So, other comments or questions? Councilmember Rosepepe?
First of all, John, thanks for going first on comments. Just to also remind council that while we may not be happy that we only had one bidder, the estimate, if we put this off any longer, is going to be an additional $1 million next year. So I think it's prudent to move ahead while we can with summertime, and the work needs to be done. We all know it needs to be done. So I'm definitely in favor. We may not like the price tag, but better now than later. What is the old Fram thing? Pay me now or pay me later? Yeah. So.
Those are good points. So yes, we would have liked to have seen more bids. But on the other hand, if we miss this construction season and the way inflation is running, it was going to cost us, 7 to 10% more a year from now to do the same work. So we were, close enough to our engineer's estimates that we felt it was prudent to bring this forward to you.
Tony, do we know anything about Lincoln? I mean.
Yes, they're very reputable. Our RFM is very aware of them as well, our consultant, or
Thank you.
architectural designer.
Bryce Fergus Miller, our design team, yes. Councilmember
I
Cacciardi?
think the only other comment I would make is just to thank the council, for a number of years of just the fiscal policies that have been put in place that enables this to happen. The city's in a healthy position to be able to take care of its assets. This is a public building, and it's our responsibility to plan and prepare for, keeping these things maintained. And so it's great that we work together, plan for this, and now executing on it.
And Councilmember Chang?
The only thing I would ask is that when Noah brings forward the bond package, can he just remind us of how City Hall was paid for? Because I think it would be helpful for people to realize that was also paid for in a similar fashion.
Yes, it was.
A lot of times you just see a building and you figure, oh, it's paid for, it's done.
Right.
But it's something that took a long time, and we did pay it off in a prudent fashion. So I'd say if you could just remind us about the earlier bond.
Yep. Good point. All right, any last comments? Okay, you'll be voting on a resolution approving a contract with Lincoln Construction for the City Hall renovations project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. Scaffolding's going up next. We're to item D, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with KCI Technologies, Inc. for the Asset Management Program Development and On-Call Consulting Support. Mr. Lang, this is you again.
Thank you. The city identified a need for an asset management plan to document and track the city's infrastructure, including but not limited to the utility assets, maintenance, and life cycles. In furtherance of that goal, in 2022, the city hired a consultant to help develop an asset management plan and to recommend an asset management software program that would best meet the needs of the city. The plan and software recommendation are now complete, and the city wishes to develop procedures for the program management and implementation of the asset management plan. Due to limited staff resources and expertise in this field, the city desires the assistance of a consultant with expertise in asset management, asset program management, and who is qualified to assist with the implementation of the asset management plan and its associated procedures. The next paragraph summarizes the consultant selection process. Staff recommends adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with KCI Technologies, Inc. for asset management program development and on-call consulting support in an amount not to exceed $150,000 and documenting the professional services procurement procedures.
Councilmember Trenary.
I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with KCI Technologies, Inc. for asset management program development and on-call consulting support.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Trenary, a second by Councilmember Rosapepe. This is a project that we've been working on for a number of months. You guys got a presentation at a recent work study talking about asset management and the importance of it and what it will mean for our city to, not new information here. So questions or comments? All right, you'll be voting on a resolution approving a contract with KCI Technology for the asset management program. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the contract has been approved. We're to item E, adoption of a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a sublease agreement with the Port of Bremerton for the Marina Pump Station project. Mr. Lang, this is you again.
Charlie's going to fill in for me.
I'm going to take this one on to
Catch
give him
you
a
up with
break.
attorney.
Thank you. The council will recall that in late 2022, we entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Port of Bremerton with regards to the Marina Pump Station project. That is because the Marina Pump Station project will involve both a temporary construction encroachment on property that the Port of Bremerton leases from DNR, and it will also involve a permanent encroachment, which is in the same footprint as as a current permanent encroachment on that leased area. And that memorandum of understanding that you authorized execution of and execution occurred contemplated the city taking the onus of doing the work necessary to tick all the boxes we're required to move forward with the project, including the development and negotiation and execution of a sublease to the DNR lease that Port of Bremerton maintains. There's a patchwork of leases in this area, and we are slowly working through all the different regulatory steps to ensure that we have all the proper authority to construct the Marina Pump Station. And this is one of the final steps as to the Marina Pump Station. We will come back to you in the future with Community Event Center related items as well. So what's before you this evening is a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a sublease agreement with the Port of Bremerton for the Marina Pump Station tied to the DNR lease that the Port of Bremerton has. DNR has approved the terms of the sublease, but by policy they do not sign the subleases, but they've issued a written acknowledgement that our sublease meets their requirements, and that's necessary for you to approve. Once you approve, then the Port of Bremerton will take action to approve. And again, this sublease is for the temporary construction encroachment and a permanent encroachment. A flag for the future. Next year, we will come back with a lease adjustment for that permanent encroachment because DNR wants the leases to match where the structures are located. But this is our topic for today. So happy to stand for any questions in that very convoluted situation.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a sublease with the Port of Bremerton for the Marina Pump Station project.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Lucarelli. Do you have any questions? Councilmember Clausen, go ahead.
Just a comment that, we've been talking about the waterfront a lot here tonight with the Kitsap Bank and the community center, and now this piece to the construction project that we need to take action on and get moving for that entire corner, if you will, of downtown. So this is just a piece that we need to comply with to keep this thing moving.
Exactly right. Other questions or comments? All right, you'll be voting on a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a sublease agreement with the Port of Bremerton for the Marina Pump Station. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the resolution passes. We're back to the waterfront again here with item F, approval of amendment number 11 to contract number 066.20 with Rice Fergus Miller, Inc. for the Community Event Center project. Mr. Bond, this is you.
Right, thank you. The city is in the final stages of designing the Community Event Center building and will soon apply for building permits to begin the building plan review process. The city has not yet completed the design of the associated adjacent site improvements. This design work was referenced in the original request for qualifications issued for the Community Event Center project, but the design work was delayed due to the need to coordinate with 3 other adjacent projects, including the new Kitsap Bank, the Marina Lift Station project, and the Bay Street reconstruction project. The scope of work attached to Contract Amendment 11 provides the city with a schematic design on the pedestrian plaza at the east entrance of the Community Event Center, connecting to the parking lot improvements that will be available to Community Event Center users. This includes areas of the Orchard Street right-of-way and areas adjacent to the Marina Lift Station. This schematic design work is needed before the city can file its shoreline substantial development permit application for a phased project that includes the CEC and all adjacent site improvements. Upon completion of schematic design under Amendment 11, a subsequent contract amendment will be needed to take this design to 100% plan specs and engineering. The staff recommendation is to approve Contract Amendment 11 to Contract 066-20 as presented. And I would point out that in your packet on page 735 is a map that is in the scope of work that highlights the area that we are now moving to design. And Janine, I don't know if you can go to page 735, but the area that is shown in red, you better zoom out. The area shown in red on this map is the area that will be added to the overall design, and we have not completed this portion of the design yet. It is our hope that we will be able to obtain some additional grant funds next year that will allow us to bid this, everything that's shaded in blue, green, or red as one project when we build the Community Event Center.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve contract amendment number 11 to contract C066-20 as presented.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Clausen, a second by Councilmember Cacciardi. The reason we waited more than anything on this is we wanted to have the cash in the bank to pay for this particular design. So this is being funded solely with our park impact fees. And this is important work. We need to have it done, but we wanted to wait until we had cash in hand to pay for it. So that's why this element, it's important. It wasn't quite as important as the shoreline or the building or the street. And our goal is to obtain a grant and then leverage additional park impact fees that are coming from development, and to bid all three of these elements as one large project is our goal. So, Councilmember Clausen?
Yes, and I'm sitting here with a grin on my face thinking at the presentation by Kitsap Bank and that they were not painting that area white. It was left blank because we're filling in that blank with this effort here, so.
Right, that's why it was blank, because we haven't done any design work on this plaza.
And now we're going to start filling that void in, so this is great.
Other comments? All right, another, I guess, check in a box and advancing this fabulous project forward. So you'll be voting on amendment number 11 to contract 06620 with Rice Fergus Miller for the Community Event Center project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? None. The contract amendment has been approved. We're on our last business item. Approval of amendment number 4, contract number 053.19 with Robinson Noble Inc. for the 2019 through 2020, hasn't that already happened? Foster Pilot Project Services.
Yeah, that was the original contract date, so.
Okay.
On September 10th, 2019, following a procurement process that complied with state law and city's procurement policies, the City Council approved contract numbers C053-19 with engineering and consulting firm Robinson Noble Inc. for the 2019-2020 ESSB 6091 Foster Pilot Project Services, including stream flow augmentation, restoration, net ecological benefits, and hydrogeological services on December 3rd, 2020 and November 15th, 2021. Consistent with his delegated authority, the Public Works Director executed amendments number 1 and 2 to the agreement, extending the term of the agreement. On May 3rd, 2023, staff concluded, in consultation with the consultant, that additional time and continued work are needed to support the continuation of the 2019-2020 ESSB 6091 Foster Pilot Project. The city and the consultant have conferred and agreed to an increased fee for the necessary continued work under the existing scope of services and to a revised Exhibit E fee schedule. As amended, the not-to-exceed amount of the agreement is increased by $100,000 to a new total of $563,857, inclusive of all work performed and compensated to date. The city and the consultant also proposed to extend the duration of the agreement to December 30th, 2024. The 2023-2024 budget includes funding for the continuation of service. Staff recommends the council authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 to contract number C053-19 with Robinson Noble Inc. for the 2019-2020 ESSB 6091 Foster Pilot Project Services to extend the term and increase the contract amount by $100,000 for a total amended contract amount of $563,857.
Councilmember Lucarelli.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute amendment number 4 to contract number C053-19 with Robinson Noble Inc. for the 2019-2020 ESSB 6091 Foster Pilot Project Services.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lucarelli, a second by Councilmember Rosapepe. For those, back to 2019, this has been a long and painful process to get water rights on our 3 wells, and we have had significant process. We've moved this process forward significantly in the last few months, coming to a tentative agreement with the Squaxin tribe, and we continue to negotiate with other partners in this process. So we think there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's what we have to do to get water rights to pump water out of the wells that 2 of which we've already drilled. So, Councilmember Clausen?
Yeah, you pretty much covered what I was going to say. In the utility committee this evening, we heard that there has been good progress being made in working with the Squaxin tribe on some of the issues. And so it's finally moving forward, and hopefully, as you suggest, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Councilmember Rosenberg?
Mayor, and there's a state component to this also, isn't there?
They ultimately have to approve it. It's ecology, correct, Nick?
Yes.
Tony? So, but they won't approve it unless we can come to an agreement with
Right.
the stakeholders over the mitigation. So when we draw water out, we have to provide mitigation and stream flow augmentation. And when we drilled that 2,000-foot deep well, the area that we impact grew, in theory. So that's what we have to mitigate for.
Thank you.
Mayor, so Jackie Brown is attending remotely, and she does have her hand raised.
Love to hear from Jackie Brown on this.
I don't know.
Jackie Brown is our utilities manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, the state component, I just wanted to clarify that a little bit. The Department of Ecology has the ultimate decision-making power on whether or not we get water rights. And we need to write a report of examination in order to support our position to them. One of the things that has been a real positive step forward is that we are now coming very close to an agreement with Squaxin Island Tribe as to what that report of examination can entail to basically replace the stream inflow stream flow for the streams that are in their usual and customary grounds. Since they comprise 71% of the streams that we would be affecting, that's a big piece right there. We are looking at an adaptive management plan so that we can change as we get new information. That's the piece that we're not sure that ecology will be able to accept. We're hoping that with the support of the tribe, we'll be able to get there.
Thank you for that, Jackie.
Certainly.
Other questions or comments? All right, you'll be voting on amendment number 4 to contract 05319 with Robinson Noble Inc. for the Foster Pilot Program services. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Hearing none, the amendment has been approved. All right, we don't have any discussion items. We'll go to council committee reports. Economic Development was supposed to meet next week, but for no agenda items, it's been canceled. The Utilities Committee met tonight. Councilmember Lucarelli, you have a report?
Yes, we actually just discussed the Foster Pilot Project update. We had a discussion about a stormwater comprehensive plan level of service, which was difficult. More information forthcoming, and that will be going to a work study for the rest of the council members. We also talked about our sewer rate study. I love these reports, but that too it was something we'll hear more about. We covered the cross connection control program briefly, and also the fats, oils, and grease control program. Again, more information forthcoming in the future. We will be looking at another meeting. When did we determine on that? That will be the following.
July 11th.
July 11th.
Yes, this is the next meeting. All right, thank you for your report. Finance meets tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. The agenda says 5, but it's at 3 here in the council conference room. Transportation hasn't set a meeting date yet, and I don't believe they've met since last council meeting. Just Festival Chimes and Lights, anything to report, new to report?
No, just updates on everything we've already discussed.
Okay, land use was scheduled to meet on the 21st, but I believe that's been canceled also due to lack of items. Anything from lodging tax to report?
Not till fall.
All right. And I know the Sewer Advisory Committee is looking for a date to meet, and you're working with the West Sound Group to find a date that works for everybody. All right, so now we are to the mayor's report. Hopefully you've driven around lately and seen all the blacktop out there. Isn't that beautiful out there on Old Clifton Road? The only pieces left are the Walmart intersection, which I think is 2 weeks out because they're doing modifying some sidewalk ramps to make them ADA compliant. And we're still waiting on a proposal back on the in front of the Lowe's light. That's very rutted in that area, and it wasn't in the original bid specs. And since we came in low and we have some extra money, we're seeking a proposal on that paving there too. So a couple more pieces left to do, but largely it's done, and they finished up Old Clifton last night, so looks great. Cheers site. They're gonna break ground next month, we're told. They're gonna demolish the building and clean up the contaminated soil and move forward with their project. So lots of good stuff going on downtown. We're out to bid on the Marina Pump Station, and as I'm required in our council policies, I need to report personnel policy changes. So we've updated job descriptions for the sewer, water, and stormwater coordinator positions. And the biggest changes are when we restructured Public Works, now those individuals related to the utilities report to our utilities manager, Jackie Brown. And I think that makes a lot more sense. We also updated the job descriptions for the IT support specialist and police sergeants. Updates were also made to our policies related to holidays and personal holidays, provided clarification to part-time employees and when employees are on leave without pay. So things with the state's Family Leave Act, when we're not paying them, and how we address holidays and things there. You know, when I looked back at our meeting minutes from 100 years ago, I really couldn't find much worth reporting, or 75 years ago, but 50 years ago. And I think the Transportation Committee can appreciate this. We received a petition from residents in the area of West Street between South and Melcher requesting speed bumps replaced because of the speeding. So we've been hearing a lot about speeding and speed bumps lately, and this item was referred to the Street and Alley Committee. So some things never change. So that concludes my mayor's report. So, department heads, Mr. Lang.
Yes, also to add to that, well 11 will be out to bid by the end of this Friday. And also, if you haven't noticed, the totem pole at the Sydney waterfront has been dismantled and it's up in Nia Bay currently. Bill Martin Jr., the grandson of Frank Smith, is actually restoring the pole. So hopefully he's anticipating that it'll take approximately 3 weeks. Makah tribe has expressed interest in being a part of an unveiling or a ribbon cutting ceremony when we put that back up. So I think it's a pretty cool project to report on. So other than that, that's all I got.
Tony? Slun, what's new in HR?
I actually have no report tonight.
Bond?
Well, in addition to the 429 Bay Street project that I was going to announce,
I couldn't help myself.
Kentucky Fried Chicken also had their permit issued today, and they're moving up onto Bethel next to Taco Time, and so they will have, they'll be able to break ground on their site development. They still are working on their building plan revisions, but I would expect to see that break ground soon also.
Nice. Ms. Archer?
Thank you. Just 2 quick items to report on this evening. I like to keep you abreast of changes in case law that are relevant to the city, and the U.S. Supreme Court issued a decision that we've been awaiting in a matter called Sackett versus the Environmental Protection Agency. And this case had been long awaited because it essentially reestablished or modified the jurisdiction under the Clean Water Act of the federal government to regulate navigable waters of the United States. And this decision shifted the definition of a water that is subject to federal jurisdiction under the Clean Water Act to require that those waters have a continuous surface connection. So this essentially guts any jurisdiction over streams, over waters that do not have a surface connection with jurisdictional waters or with the large body waters. So it's foundational for a lot of the way in which we understand critical area jurisprudence and critical area analysis, and I'm happy to discuss it with any of you any time, because this is a big one we've been waiting for. We've already talked about it quite a bit, and I'm sure the state is reeling. Army Corps of Engineers jurisdiction shrunk, so it could potentially have some big ramifications moving forward. So that's the first item. The second item I wanted to follow up on, the last council meeting, there was a brief discussion with regards to the legislation the state adopted in response to the Blake decision. And there was a brief comment with regards to drug paraphernalia. And I apologize, I missed it at the time, but I wanted to follow up because I wanted to make clear that unfortunately the state government has preempted local jurisdiction with regards to drug paraphernalia in its entirety. There are only very limited abilities for local agencies to regulate, and that's as to needle exchanges, essentially. So otherwise, drug paraphernalia is co-opted by the state, and as we've described, or as we've discussed before, selling remains a civil infraction. Giving or permitting it to be used remains a civil infraction, or excuse me, it's no longer prohibited at all. Sorry, it's not even an infraction any longer. Using drug paraphernalia will continue to be a misdemeanor. So we've unfortunately saw in this bill that is now completely the jurisdiction of the state. Unfortunately, is my term, so I apologize for that. But thank you.
So, and if you missed it, I think other than Councilmember Trenary, Chief spoke at the Port Orchard Chamber of Commerce this last week and did a great job talking about drug possession and some of the law changes and body cameras and other things. So, Chief, go ahead.
Thank you. Just keep council appraised of where we are with hiring. We have one currently in background. We still have 4 openings, but we do have interviews and boards on Thursday, I believe, and we have a full slate, so we're gonna knock on wood that they all show up for that. If we were to hire the person that's in background this month, we're looking at January or February for an academy date. They are backed up. They still have one satellite academy in Richland. They're hoping to expand that to Spokane. Spokane Sheriff's Office just opened up a $42 million training facility, so we're hoping to speed things up, but yeah, it's 5 to 6 months to get in the academy. But again, thanks for the support and getting us extra bodies.
Councilman Clausen?
Yeah, Chief, you raised an interesting question. If we're able to hire somebody today but not get him into the academy until January, what do we do between now and January? Do they just sit in the office and?
No, it's actually an opportunity for us to kind of show them a little bit more before they go to the academy. So we're working with prosecutor's office. We're working with Kitsap 911. We've got an agreement with the Teamsters, who is our union for administrative and professional staff, where they can work temporarily in there and kind of learn more about that system and process. There's also a leadership course that's offered through WASPIC, which can get them college credit, and they are doing that as well. So there's plenty to do. We just don't have the ability to put them out on patrol.
Thank you, Chief. Janine, anything from the clerk's office?
Nothing to report, but I do see that Noah Crocker is attending through Zoom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Noah, do you have a staff report for us tonight?
The only report I have for the council is that we have filed our annual report as of May 31st. So we anticipate the state auditor's office to be contacting us, and we'll probably start the audit here in late June to early July.
Okay. Thank you for that update, Noah. Councilmember
I have a
Chang?
question actually for Ms. Archer. What is the definition of drug paraphernalia? Does that encompass head shops?
Does that encompass head shops?
Yeah. Or what's known as head shops.
It would. The definition.
I mean, we have, no, it doesn't.
Marijuana industry is legalized. It's
Okay.
drug paraphernalia
yeah, I
related
can't imagine
to
it would.
illegal drugs.
I mean, when you say drug paraphernalia, I'm thinking, is that a bong? I mean, I don't know what you're talking about.
All equipment, products, and materials of any kind which are used, intended for use, or designed for use in planting, propagating, cultivating, growing, harvesting, manufacturing, compounding, converting, producing, repackaging, ingesting, inhaling, or otherwise introducing into the human body a controlled substance other than cannabis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it really covers everything.
All right. Yeah. With that, we'll move on to our second citizen comment period. And so Members of the public have 3 minutes, and it was a good reminder from our city attorney that we can't not speak against political or against political issues, but we can speak with actual information. So
Correct. Statements like vote in favor of, or vote for, or don't vote for, those are prohibited insofar as we are prohibited from allowing our public facility to be used for those statements to be made. But statements about information, underlying legislation, stated merely as informational, I think is permitted.
thank you for that. And with that, we will open our second citizen comment period. And anyone wishing to the council, please step to the microphone and identify yourself.
Again, I'm Jeff Daly, citizen from Port Orchard. This is a little bit more information dealing with the levy. What I see is a mission creep, and my question is what is the mission of the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue? Should be fire and suppression, putting out fires. Statistics say they had about 60 fires last year. EMS is to stabilize patients and offer ambulance service. That's about 68% of theirs. I know this is very hard to read. And it looks like some of the, on the Kitsap Peninsula are talking about the CARES program. So all of these seem to be more and more is pushed to the South Kitsap Fire and Rescue.
My apologies. I closed it up.
Oh, okay.
It was too tiny to read anyway.
Okay, thanks. So I think they need to maintain the mission that they have. The question about calls always comes up. Please use the chief's number of 12208. I had 11,000. But basically, when you go through, if you can even see it, what I have done is when you start subtracting calls out, 58 for fires, 68% of the remaining calls, which is about 7,400. If they're serious, they're transporting 20 people a day to a hospital, which would be very difficult. We'd need ambulance service to do that. And when you send a unit out to the hospital, it's out of service. So basically, the bottom line when you go to the very bottom down there is, what are the other 3,500 calls? We all now have cell phones, I think is one of the reasons that, 8 people call when they see an accident or a fire or something like that. So the question is are all of those calls so important that we need more stations and 30 more people? And one of the things that does concern me is when I hear the word bonds, we have all kinds of bonds. Your levies, the South Kitsap School District bonds and levies, the fire department levies. As a taxpayer, bonds and levies kind of getting weighty. So thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to address the council this evening in our last citizen comment period? And if you're online, you can use the raise your hand feature.
Okay, we have Mr. Dave Kimball has raised his hand, so he should be allowed to speak right now.
Thank you again, and thank you, City Council, for a very interesting meeting. I also want to do a shout out to the chief, fire chief, for restraining it from any more of these fearful utterances through others about how we're all in such danger that we're not going to be able to get responses. Everything's getting worse. It's just the gloom and doom. You might burn in your bed. You'll die of a heart attack in your bed. Those aren't ways to convince voters to help funding. I just am so glad you laid off making those kinds of comments and writing too, because no one deserves to be frightened into voting for anything. It's all choice, and I wish you luck on your next levy. And as Mr. Daly said, it'll be levy, bond, levy, bond, back and forth like ping pong between the school district and the fire district. So good for you for getting yours in there first, and good luck on passing your levy. Thanks.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the city council? Hearing none, I'll close the second citizen comment period. We're to the good of the order. Is there anything for the good of the order? Councilman McClawson.
Yeah, I have a question, I guess, first to the attorney and then secondly to the council as a whole. For the city to take a position on such things as the fire district's proposal, in the past, we've had to notify the community that we would take testimony both for and against, and once we heard the community's reaction at that point, if the council so desired, they could take a position on that. Is that still the case? And then I guess the next question is the council interested in going through that process to take a position on the fire district's proposal? We've done that numerous times in the past where we've solicited the community's input either for or against, and then the council has taken a position. So, question for the council, were you interested in that, or we just?
And if we were, we would need to do it at our next council meeting, because after that is past the vote. So, Councilmember Cacciardi?
My feeling is that we, encourage, the discussion and the opportunity for groups to come out and talk about that information, but I don't know that it's really impactful for us to really take a position. I think we're there to help inform and be a means of information, but I'm not sure that we should be taking a position on measures all the time. I think it's up to the individual voter, and I don't know that that's our role as a policy board for the city of Port Orchard.
Thoughts? Councilmember Trenary?
John, that's a real interesting question. But I agree with Sean. I think as a council, that isn't part of our responsibility. I do believe it's the responsibility of the individual voters to seek out all the information they need to make the best decision that they feel they're making.
Thoughts?
Well, I guess
Councilmember
I
Chang,
have a
go
real
ahead.
quick question for the city attorney. If we were to have the discussion where we were going to make a recommendation either way, would we be permitted to abstain? Generally, when we make rule on an ordinance, we are not allowed to abstain, but in a recommendation like this, could we?
I'll have to double check your rules of procedure, but it would be by resolution is typically how statements of policy are made. So if that rule is specific to ordinance, then you would be permitted to abstain. But I could double check your rules. What typically occurs is the council member, and I apologize, I nodded rather than answer verbally. The council is authorized to schedule a public hearing to hear testimony on both sides. And then at that meeting, you could take a vote on a resolution that I could draft in advance. I can draft one of each side and bring that, and then you could vote to approve. But I'll double check the rules while you continue your discussion.
Rose Pepe.
I would weigh in that we should make a informed, recommend a resolution, and the reason one way or the other, and the reason I say that is these items as schools and fire levies, bonds, they are going to impact the city, and either positively or negatively. And if we don't weigh in, then I think we're risking an possible outcome that could be detrimental to us. That's my 2 cents.
Pirelli, you haven't spoke on this. We've heard from everybody else.
So it would have to be done at the next meeting?
It would have to.
Hearing would have to be done?
We would have to. We would need to notice.
Half of you are gone.
No, we're not.
Not that meeting.
We're
The following.
It'd be the 27th is when it would need to have, because the
Okay.
ballot is
Yes.
measure is the first week in August. And that was our last council meeting before the ballot measure.
Well, I actually do not want to take a stand on this. I think it is important for people to listen to both sides, and I would say no.
Councilmember Clausen?
I was just going to, and, you know, clearly if the majority of the council's not interested, then it's a moot issue. But like Jay indicated, I think, you know, these issues do affect the city of Port Orchard. And the fire district is our fire department. The school district is our school district. They serve our community. So for the city to take a position either for or against, personally, we're not voting on it. We're just giving our opinion based on a resolution of what we look at from the city's perspective. What will this do, pro or con, for the city of Port Orchard? So these types of things, I personally do not have a problem in listening to both sides of the issue and making what I believe to be what is in the best interest of the city, either for or against. And it's just simply conveying to the community that from our collective perspective, that this is what we think that it's going to do for the city of Port Orchard. But clearly, if the majority of the council is not interested, and as I said, it's a moot issue, so.
Well, I guess we're at 3-2, and I would look at Fred to say interested, not interested, because that may make it a tie with waiting for Scott to weigh in or the mayor to weigh in.
Well, I was thinking that individuals could endorse a motion, but I know that's not what we're talking about is, does the body as a whole want to take a stance either way? And yeah, I'm pretty on the fence, but I would say if I had to go either way, I'd probably say no.
Settles that.
Councilmember, or excuse, not, you're, Ms. Archer, you're not a council member.
Just to answer the abstention question, the rule is, this rule is specific to each city, so that's why I couldn't answer it. But your rule is that you are only allowed to abstain where there is a personal financial conflict or where you have been absent and you're abstaining from voting on the meeting minutes. And I do not see a rule in your vote, a rule in your rules as to whether an abstention counts as a yay or nay. So we default to the Roberts rule, which is it would just not count as a vote. So I would argue in this context that you do not have the right to abstain unless you identify some personal financial interest associated with this, or a conflict. Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the order? Our meeting is adjourned.
No, I'm definitely in the middle. I'm on the
Well,
fence.
yeah, I hate to say it, when the school comes up, it will